So is there some place besides, I definitely agree with trying to get information to the legislature. It's difficult to do. They have, but the more times that we can interface with legislators, I think the better. So during the interim, and I don't know if there's a possibility for connecting grantees to their legislators and helping support them to set up a meeting to come and look at the program or have a conversation about what the outcomes are, something that's that's interactive that could hit a number of legislators. But I wonder if there are other electronic pathways besides the ODE YDD website. Where are there more distribution strategies?
There's a couple, and that's what I'm saying. We need to develop some of that. We do have a YouTube, right? And that just barely brand new. It hasn't been like kind of publicly made because we're still populating information on it, right? And it's very new, and we still haven't built, to be quite honest, a strategy around that. But we're talking about that right now. But I think there's a lot of opportunity there, and it's not just to legislators, but I know in some of the conversations we had yesterday around the private sector, Jaime brought it up, right? How do we leverage private sector to support some of the stuff that we're doing, right? I think there are some opportunities there where, you know, a nonprofit and someone in the private sector could perhaps partner, right, in helping youth, for example, I don't know, with job training or a stipend or something around that. I don't know, right? That's kind of. But I think there's some opportunities that we can kind of get that information across to the, you know, I don't know, it's just an idea. And that's kind of for me why I think, well, let's develop a communications plan, right? And not only that, then we can target our messaging to specific groups, right? I mean, we can start seeing, there's a lot of really neat tools out there, I think, where you can, obviously, I think some of the nonprofits already use it, to be quite honest, where you send an email, you know, if they looked at it, if they opened it, how many times they opened it, did they click on the link when they opened the email? Those type of analytics, right? To see who's reading our stuff, our information, right? I think, and then being able to harness that information ourselves and see how, you know, it benefits the youth that we're serving. I mean, I'm getting kind of into the weeds there, but.
No, I totally agree with you though. And I love the energy that you have around this. I think it's a really good idea. You might end up needing a staff position just to do this. Yeah.
That's
because you lose momentum so fast. It can, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm wondering, you know, what the role the council can play in some of those connections as well, right? And so there's, you know, 30 of us here on the call, and we all have connections with, you know, in different areas and different spaces. And, you know, the legislators, I think some of us are advocates in the space, and some of us are, you know, researchers and data analysts, or, you know, and some of us are, you know, doing youth and family work. And so I think that there's also that connection. I think that there's pieces that, you know, again, going back to, you know, what role can the YDC play that is a lot more meaningful, or a lot more intentional, rather than, you know, just only attending meetings or making recommendations and insight, right? And so a little bit more personal that way. And I think that one of the things that we were trying to do before COVID was just visit the grantees, right? Visit the sites that are actually doing the work, so that way we can understand the work better. And I'm also thinking maybe potentially that there's a way of that to engage grantees in that too. So with the shared learning, with the communication that you were talking about, Abe, I think, you know, in addition to that helping legislators, I think it helps with community building and finding out where the gaps are within service systems as well, especially in the rural areas, as many of us are, you know, are tri-county centric, that there's a lot to learn from that as well.
It's kind of an internal and external communications, it seems
exactly.
like.
So does it make sense to me to add that to our growing list of actions that we wanted to put in terms of our assignment while we were sitting in this room, that we should capture that, because I don't think that comes out in the current plan very well.
Yeah, I think maybe one of the things that we should probably point out, because it says right here, the priority 4 is strengthen YDC communication and awareness capacity to achieve priorities, goals, and measurable outcomes, is that we have to acknowledge that there is an internal and external communication structural needs. And that, that our actions should also reflect that as well. Strategies and actions should reflect that.
And Abe, do you have a sense of how much the Department of Education or those positions in the department who work directly with kids who might be challenged with attendance or behavioral health challenges or other issues? So have you thought about a communication plan with the department so they know
We've had
what
discussions
we're doing
actually.
for the ESDs? The ESDs often have other kinds of programs. Yeah.
We've had discussions internally,
Mhm.
but honestly, a lot of it is again kind of what Quay kind of alluded to, right? From a capacity point of view, and I'm possibly needing a new staff, possibly, really around that, because it really a lot of it is kind of, and we've communicated this, right? Is the amount of work we have in front of us and doing things here and there, and then having to work and coordinate with ODE and our other agencies. So sometimes we have something already, for example, our new website, the revamp, right? It's been a work in progress, but a lot of the classic government, right? You just kind of run into these little challenges. Well, you need this, then you need to get this other form, fill that out. Then you guys say, okay, well, we only review these forms like once or twice a month. So those type of things, oftentimes what we've run into because of the size of our agency. So we rely on ODE and other government entities when we want to try to get something. I know those have been some of the challenges and trying to get around that and figuring it out, right? How to navigate that when certain things or structures within working with some of the other agencies we have to rely on, for example, ODE, aren't really yet structured, I think, for some of the stuff that we want to do. Oftentimes, for a perfect example, is a lot of the documentation just refers to student. And we're like, well, we're interested in students too, but we're also interested in those, youth who aren't students, right? So sometimes it's kind of, there's a crisscross. There's sometimes we meet and sometimes we kind of miss each other and we kind of have to go back and talk. So those are some of the challenges I think that we sometimes face. I think that on the outside is not easily seen, right? But we kind of work through them, and it can be frustrating at times, but you do what you got to do.
Okay, so I put.
I'm sorry, Lindsay. We've been here just kind of talking.
No, I'm sorry. I'm kind of taking notes on the side because if you guys see this keeps moving a little bit. So we put this one as one of the actions. So what are our 3 to 5? What was Jeff mentioned one we should put and I didn't catch it.
Well, I think we've got the 4 of them in there. One of them is a timeline. One of them is a mental health piece with ODE. One of them is around a feedback cycle. And then just going through the chat was, what was the 4th one?
Communications plan. I think you might have missed that one.
I'm curious as far as why the mental health is under this priority.
It might be the awareness piece right there. I'm with you. It feels a little strange, but I don't know what the other priorities are. It may not fit well into any of them.
I think it has to do with the awareness capacity. Yeah.
Okay.
Are there any of them?
And as far as awareness capacity is to build awareness?
I think that's the first part. Before, I don't know how the awareness and then building off that. Once you know that there's an awareness of it, okay, what do we do now?
Mm-hmm.
Or how do we, if people are aware, for example, our grantees, right, or that it's a priority within the YDC, however it may be, right, then the next logical question, okay, now we know, what do we do? I imagine, I don't know.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Lindsay, these emojis or whatever icons look hard to deal with.
Yeah, I never saw this until today, so it's
Right.
all
Yeah,
new.
You're learning how to use it too.
we're with you. We got you.
But after kind of seeing yesterday everybody's notes compiled, I was like, okay, well, it's okay, I guess, if it's a little bit messy.
Yeah. It's fine.
Brian and Cord seem to go through them pretty well.
I think you're doing fine.
So Abraham, does the piece that you drilled down on, that fits under that communication plan? And Coy, what you were talking about is acknowledging both an internal and an external audience.
Yeah.
Which is sort of a sub bullet of the communication plan.
Yeah. I think this is part, especially when it comes to the external part, I think it's just where the council can play a huge role, and also internal in regards to communications with the council, right? From staff to council, right? And what that looks like, or what we want to accomplish, set up some goals around that. Maybe, I don't know.
I'm just also wondering about the intra-department communication too.
Yeah.
And how much of that actually happens. I don't know. So, and I, you know, I'm just working with different departments. I know that different departments have different tools. Some are really great, and then it just stays at that department too. And it's just, I'm just curious as far as like how much of that is being shared. Because when we were working on the Early Childhood Equity Fund, and I was part of the implementation committee after it was completed, you know, exactly what you were talking about, Abe, as far as like this interactive tools, we're trying to find all the culturally specific organizations, and one of the coordinators was able to like basically have an interactive map. And how wonderful would that be if we just had that for Oregon rather than just stays in one department only?
I think even in that third bullet again, you know, it actually kind of aligns really well again with the kind of the external, internal audiences and communication. It's again, it's kind of that alignment with what ODE is doing and what we're doing.
Yeah, one thing that I would add, and this is a little bit of a side, sorry, Lindsay, I know you're frantically keeping up with the conversation, is even just looking at the way this goal is stated, I think we do ourselves a favor if we de-jargonize as much as possible, because it's really, I mean, we just finished our strategic plan internally in our organization, and it was really hard to resist the temptation of using jargon to hide behind what we really meant. And those are hard conversations, like what do we really mean? And so if there is a way to do it, the challenge in this environment is in many ways, there's no standardized vocabulary. There's no community of practice that says this is what this means. But the more we can move that direction, I think the better off our communication strategy is.
Okay. Looks like we have 5 minutes. My clock's at 6, but
we'll use your clock, Aram.
Did the screen just get smaller, or is that me? Only my screen.
It looks the same, but
I think it's just mine then. Now the Google Doc is even smaller for me for some reason. Hey Parsa, how are you?
Hey, doing well. So sorry I am late. I just wrapped up a meeting, but I'm really happy to listen in to some of the conversation here.
Yeah, we're jumping in from different meetings too. I was.
I think this is good.
So are these are 3 priorities that we're kind of highlighting here specifically?
Yeah, our 3 to 5.
Just for clarification, for where it says more distribution strategies, that's what kind of, for communication? What was that one for? I don't recall. Under notes.
Oh, I don't know. I was right. I was listening to you guys typing notes on the side. I don't have to put that. I heard someone say it, so I took notes.
Okay. Is that? But that was in reference. Was that in reference to communication? I recall. I don't remember.
More distribution strategy. I don't remember who said it. I also have connecting grantees to their legislatures. Interactive. That can hit a number of legislatures. More interaction, the better.
Something else I want to add, I'm sorry, I don't see the full list right now, but I wonder if our group discussed maybe building in more time to connect with the State Board of Ed too, and kind of as we develop our plans and reflect on our work, are there opportunities where we loop back with State Board to look at some of the pieces where our systems really overlap, to have some of those strategic discussions. I think, Jeff, to your point, maybe that could help with how we're communicating the work too, so that it's not overly jargony, but we're getting to how do we want to have a positive impact on youth, and breaking that down. And I think how we message it looks really different in terms of like who we're talking to, and even where you are in the state. Like some parts of the state, they don't want to talk about equity, so I don't even mention the E word. I talk about it in other ways, break it down for people. But just something for us to kind of consider in some of our process work.
Yeah, I think that's a great thing to add, and I think it adds to the conversations that we're having in the earlier, and as well as the connections not only with legislators, with state departments. I think State Board is wonderful as well, and then also even connections between grantees and communities that are also serving and doing the work as well.
I love that reiteration of that list that you just did. That's a pretty good handful of work right there.
Lindsay, were you able to kind of capture those last few things, or I don't know if things are?
Yeah, you guys want me to put it in the notes over here?
I think it's just in the notes. That'd be great. Thank you so much for taking those notes, or the notes.
Yeah, thank you, Lindsay. That was amazing.
Yeah, no problem.
We didn't use a lightning bolt either. Weren't we supposed to use a lightning bolt somewhere?
So if the strategy action stands out, then you can add the lightning bolt.
Okay. I mean, it's everything we talked about is bolt worthy, isn't it?
I think so.
But out of all of that, if you had a choice to put a lightning, which one will it be? Because you only use it once.
Well, to me, it would be like, let's create the timeline in action. But, I mean, because I think that's the place to start.
Yeah.
So right next to the lemon there.
Yeah, we'll see if any other groups move our lightning bolt.
Right, is it like each group has a lightning bolt,
Oh,
or
that's
is it
right.
that
I thought about that. Yeah.
each?
I think so.
So the last group has veto power, basically.
Right.
I think are we supposed to go to the next one? I think I saw.
I think so. At times, my clock says 10 seconds.
Okay.
So any time now, probably.
Here's,
Oh, we stay in this group. Okay, I got it. I thought we were gonna get pulled out
Oh,
of this
that's
breakout
right.
room.
Yeah, because we got to do now the priority
still-
5 now.
Yeah, we're still lemons.
Okay, cool.
So priority 5.
Okay, so I guess, should we just get priority 5, copy it, and put it in the chat again? That might be the easiest way.
yeah. Come here. Where's my chat box? Here. Okay.
I think we're also, can you pull up the page that has the actions? Or maybe read what, maybe we can read. Oh, there's
Oh, wow, okay.
Oh, this one's a big one.
Oh, wow. Holy moly. Oh, like that.
Members, determination grantee.
Dave or Lindsay, do you know, can you give us the history of this document? So there's some stuff I've seen in here and some stuff I haven't. So has this been evolving over the last couple days?
You know, I am not entirely sure. Yesterday, when we got into this little lemon group, I had no idea what our questions were even based off until today.
Mm.
What do we have in here? This is all of day 3 stuff. I guess it's been like an evolving thing over the few.
I'm going to say it probably has been evolving over the course
Okay.
of the presentation. I'm going to guess.
Day 2 notes. So I think they just kind of take. Well, this is about lots of other things we talked about yesterday.
Okay.
Yeah, they didn't really tell me much. They just said you are one of the note takers, and then threw me into groups.
Sure. Well, I think there are, I mean, without a doubt, I don't think we need to look to add actions to this necessarily. There's a whole bunch of stuff in here. I just see somewhat like, you know, I'm really uncomfortable putting somebody's personal name in a public document without their, without us talking to them,
Right.
those sorts of things. Which of course Ezekiel would be great, but I don't want that to be how Ezekiel finds out.
Right. Or even right now, because
Right.
everything's recorded
Right.
in public anyway. It's a very good point. I think one of the things I was just looking at gosh, where was it? Strengthen council's sense of its purpose and role and sustain its collective wisdom and knowledge. I think one of the things that, you know, the question I always ask when we're at any table is like, whose voices are missing at the table? Having the council also reflect the community that we serve and the people that we serve, or impacted communities and communities that we serve. So I'd like to see if there's some acknowledgement of that, or at least some notes on that as far as like how to strengthen that component of that with the YDC and the council members.
I think that going along with that, another thing also, like there's been different iterations, but I think some sort of a onboarding process, I think also, for council members, where maybe you get a, I don't know, a handbook or something, I don't know, right? Where maybe you give a little bit of history and really just to get a kind of a reference point, because I think sometimes it may be difficult for council members. Maybe they come on board, but they have no point of reference for the YD other than whatever they look up on their own, perhaps. I don't know. That might be something as well. Yeah. And again, also that one and I think the youth one, I like this nothing about youth without youth, and being intentional and making sure that they are provided with the voice within the council.
Yeah, there's two of those things deal with composition of the council, and then there's another one that deals with the structure of the council. So, you know, particularly the committee structure, which all of that should be reviewed and we should be intentional about how we're doing those things.
You gonna say something, Savidi?
No, I was agreeing with you
Oh.
Regarding the onboarding and just figuring out exactly what that should look like, because you know, I just sort of established a few meetings with people to try and, you know, create some semblance of an onboarding, but there should be something. I mean, you know, you take the quizzes and, you know, you read the information that you've been given, but
And I think also kind of, you know, maybe this retreat is that as well, but it's just so kind of for the council members to have a recommitment of our values, right? And so as new members are coming in, or as we continue to talk about different issues that are affecting our youth and our communities, it's just, you know, just reevaluating and recommitting to our values or continue to reflect on our values as we are doing this work together and being intentional about that.
That's great, Coy. And one thing I would add that I was thinking about is, as we do more to recruit more youth, what are some of the barriers to participating on the council? How are we removing those barriers? Should we consider providing some sort of stipend for youth who participate? Because it is a significant amount of time. Like, if you're serving on the council and then serving on a committee, what are we doing to eliminate, to remove some of the financial burden? And I was just thinking about how on the onboarding piece, is there some differentiated onboarding we may need to provide for youth in participating and supporting their leadership and work here? So those are all questions that I kind of want to add, but I don't see it as necessary in terms of new action. I think they can fit under a handful of these buckets too.
And also one of the things I just want to prioritize, or at least have us prioritize, and I think maybe the other groups already has, is just developing the anti-racist equity plan. So I'd love to make that as one of their priorities if other groups haven't done that already, and the importance of that.
Which one?
It's strategy 5. Oh wait, maybe, I don't know. It says 1 through 5, so I don't know what that means.
Oh,
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
I-
Yeah, and I'm also thinking about like parents. So we talk about youth, but we don't talk about parents or caregivers in this space the same way too, and just acknowledging that their voices are also important in this space.
sorry, what did you say?
So, maybe something about as we're trying to strengthen or be more inclusive with and strengthen youth participation, that YDC should also consider including parents and caregivers' voices in the space as well.
Oh my gosh, it keeps cutting out, sorry.
Oh, did you want me to repeat that, Lindsay?
Or type it. It keeps cutting out on my side when you're
I don't know if I can type it.
Oh, I meant in the chat, maybe.
Oh, I see. Sure. I just feel like if I'm chatting, it will be for the rest of the group. It's for everybody.
Right.
Just out of context. But just to include parents' voices in YDC, YDD.
Coy, I'm not seeing other chats come up in our chat stream, so it might just be
Really?
in our breakout.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay, so that's good. So it's everyone in this group, maybe?
Yeah, I would expect that other people are
Yes,
using the
just
chat box too.
And
Okay,
you can
cool.
send a direct chat message just to Lindsay herself, or
Oh,
just
yeah,
to from the drop down. So
There, this is
I think that's great.
that's good.
Oh.
Okay.
Got it.
Were there others that you caught too, Lindsay, as far as the conversation that we had?
Yeah, I wrote all this stuff. I just don't know if you guys want me to put like,
Oh, I see.
what are we doing to remove some financial burden?
Maybe in the notes section for those. But we still need to prioritize 3 of the strategies or 3 of the actions, right? 3 strategies, I guess.
So we want this? There's, I don't know.
So I just want to make sure that we're kind of, I don't know. I think we're supposed to select 3 strategies from the 5 or 6 or 7 that's listed as our top 3 to 5 priorities. And then basically the notes that we had can be on the note sign.
Right, and we don't have, for some reason, we don't have our own little box for this.
Oh, I think you put in the box and you put our lemon in there so that it shows that we're
Okay.
where lemon starts, maybe.
Yeah, that's what I was asking Melissa on this one, because we didn't have, like, here's the peach.
Yeah, it's a little odd how this is set up.
So I was just writing under the boxes, but yeah, we can take up some of this one's box, I guess.
Just go ahead and add it in. Yeah, that's all right. I like that. That works.
Oh my goodness.
So should we probably talk about the 3 strategies that we want to pull? Because some of those are
Because I thought this was one.
stringy. I have to take a look at them.
Strengthen council sense.
Okay.
Here's
Intentional and nimble. What is he?
I couldn't hear you. What?
Could we add, if folks are okay, maybe adding the strategy with the equitable, inclusive, diverse, anti-racist YDC priorities as one of our priorities. So that would probably take away from the strengthen the parents' voices and move the strengthening parents' voices to the notes on the right.
Yeah, Coy, we're trying to distill this to top 3. Is that kind of what we're?
I think so. I mean,
Okay,
that's,
gotcha.
I think that's the
Yeah.
assignment, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I absolutely agree with that move, and I think there is something in there around both the composition and structure of the council and the committee structure, and all. I mean, it all is part of the same thing: the composition, the onboarding, the structure.
Right.
You know, if we're going to do a strategic plan, our committee structure should reflect the strategic plan.
And then I think the parent voice, I mean, I think that's being explicit, but I think when you're saying equitable and inclusive, that would mean you're including parents.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think there's something about, I think the one of the priorities is also for the grant making piece, or the grant, I can't remember the full title of it, but basically it's in regards to funding and resources to communities that continuously to improve YDD grant making. And I think, again, that all of that is part of the equity and diversity and anti-racist plan too. And so I think it's the incorporation of that. And so once we have that, we have council members that reflect the community and the youth that we serve, and then it all trickles down from there. Is that what other groups are doing too? Are we doing it correctly? I'm curious. I just don't know.
I don't think there's a wrong way to do it. I think we're working with what we have, and
yeah,
some
exactly.
of the challenges that we're dealing with, it's just a platform. We're doing this online, so that in itself is already.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm also sure, like, probably at the end of this process, there'll be some calibration, right, across all of the groups.
Mm-hmm. I think so. Anywhere over here we want to do a lightning bolt?
You know, one thing that it just dawned on me is that last bullet point. Like, a lot of what we do is the grant making process, right? And if we had to get one thing right, we should get that right. Like, we could be a totally dysfunctional group of people that didn't, was incapable of chewing gum and walking at the same time. But if we were that group and we still got equitable, inclusive, diverse, anti-racist grant making out, then it's a win. So to me, that is one of our key functions, and to me, that's kind of where the lightning bolt should live. Although it also lives nothing about youth without youth. I don't know. This is like trying to pick your favorite finger.
The thing about that, like you said, if you say continuously improve grant making, and then you have the / equitable, then ideally, if it's equitable, inclusive, and you're continuously improving it, then you would already have youth included in their voice.
Sure.
And here's the thing, I think that's the thing with, these are merely words, but when we build the plan, the actions tell you what you got to do to follow the plan. Mm-hmm. Thereby you have a committee, I imagine, to monitor that those actions are being followed, right? This is more of a process. I think this is just a starting point of a process, I think, more so.
Well, I can put it wherever.
Well, I'm wondering, you know, because I think I still feel everything just falls under equity, inclusion and diversity, right? And so once we get that right, then our grant making process, our council, our youth, our involvements will fall under all of that. But
I think so. I agree with that sentiment, right? But again, you know, there's more to that. Like I said, these are words on paper right now.
yeah,
And
exactly.
it'll
It's
really
the
be like I
action.
said, we have to develop all the details around that.
Mhm.
Right?
And
but I
maybe
think-
that's something that, Lindsay, can you put that on the notes somewhere as far as the implementation, the action is,
implementation and monitoring.
yeah, accountability.
Mhm. Should we move on to the next one? Does that look
Is
good
it
to
time?
everybody?
Yeah, let me go back up. I gotta figure out what's next. Oh, wait,
I was gonna go by time, honestly, but I think it's good that we have these discussions and kind of get it out there and just move on when we think we're done.
So we'll go to 1. Here's 1. In our box. Okay, here's our box. Here is
Oh, now it looks different.
1.
Access. Identify systematic problems, advanced solutions, and support structural reforms. Oh, so there's a couple strategies. I see, I get it now. So there's a couple strategies that are in both priorities. So the nothing about youth was in 5 before, and then it's back here in 1. So I was confused about what that meant earlier.
Yeah, then it had it in parentheses, right? 1.
Yeah, it's the same, the same parentheses, so, because it's
And I-
showing up twice.
I think there's a little bit of crossover in some of these priorities as well.
Yeah.
I think there's some blurring and some crossover. So that's kind of when I was like, let's just work on what we can and try to figure it out and then just kind of move on, because it is there. And I think hopefully, you know, we'll be able to get it focused once we look at everything together. I mean, partners, stakeholders.
I think everything we said before.
Right.
And put it over here for this priority as well.
Well, what's interesting about this one is that this is the one that stretches on the data.
Yeah.
Whereas I don't know, I'm just trying to think, I don't think 5 was as data centric. And this one is really about letting data inform the actions that we take. Which is, of course, begs the question of the quality of our data or the timeliness of it.
I do like the disparities in educational outcomes, but I think we may not want to limit ourselves to educational outcomes and what that means. That, again, that needs more detail to it, because it may not be fair to only use educational outcomes for some of our youth in certain situations, right? Oftentimes we talk about the high school diploma, right, and graduation rates. But for some youth, just getting the GED is a success, right? And it's probably the appropriate thing for that youth at that point in time when they got it, right? Now, that's not to say that they should be limited by that. By all means, we need to give them all the resources if they want to continue on to post-secondary studies, keeping in mind what other challenges are in front of them and how we can remove those challenges or barriers. So I think just disparities in educational outcomes are probably something else. I don't know what, but.
Well, I mean, if we just look at the data that Sanjay shared with us yesterday, I mean, it's not just educational outcomes, it's disparities in referrals. You know, it's disparities in, I mean, we can fill in the blank, right? There's a whole bunch of things that there's a whole bunch of data sets that we should use to inform, you know, programmatic decision making or grant decision making.
Should I put this in the notes with more details?
Yeah, I mean, I feel comfortable saying that there's more than just educational outcomes that we should be looking at in terms of disparities. I don't know how others feel about adding that.
Yeah, and I think you know, some folks have been using, you know, we know the social determinants of health, and then but there's also social determinant of education too. But you know, just kind of connecting all of those factors into the conversation. You know, I think that's kind of what we're all alluding to, is that it's not about one set of tools to determine outcomes, and then also determine disparities as well.
I wish they had these on top of every.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we put this as one of them in 5. I don't know if we should repeat it or not for one as one of the priorities.
Let's put it again. I don't think it'll hurt. If anything, it just gives it more emphasis.
Okay. It doesn't have to necessarily be like the first one, but you know.
It doesn't need a lightning bolt.
Right. I don't know, should this be one? I feel like we talked about that earlier too.
Yeah, Lindsay, I think it could be in you know, the annual or biannual youth summit could be an outcome of the youth engagement plan. Like I think those two could sort of be, well, we don't want to merge them because they are different ideas, but a youth engagement plan might or probably would include a youth summit.
Anybody want to pick a lightning bolt one?
Go back to the other screen, Lindsay.
You want me to go up? Here.
Copy and paste them. Device partnership. I like that action, at least under the reduce disparities, where it's prioritize resources based on disparities data. I like that one. That action.
Hey, are you trying to figure out where to land our lightning bolt? Is that?
I think that's part of it.
Yeah.
Oh, is it this one? I was reading Melissa's note.
Oh, it's the one above. Where it says prioritize resources based on disparities data.
Yeah, right in the middle. There we go.
That one, yeah.
This one we want a lightning bolt next to?
Yes.
So, oh, I guess we don't need to do that one again here.
I'm not seeing other people use lightning bolts as you scroll through there. That might mean our lightning bolts win the
Win.
day. Yeah.
Our lightning bolts wins.
Oh, here's one. Yeah.
Should we move on? Is that good enough? Should we move on to the next one? I think I saw a
Yeah.
message pop up from Melissa.
So we have one more, right? And then we get back. Okay.
Oh, what's the last?
Priority
2.
What are we? Priority 2?
Here. We want to probably more easier to read it on here. I don't know.
I feel like this is also some stuff that we've talked about already in other priority areas.
Yeah, agreed.
So the action would participate in conversation about leveraging public and private philanthropic and private resources and policies. Do you all recall what that was about?
I think it's really kind of convening and meeting with kind of basically having a roundtable with other funders.
Mm-hmm.
And I think trying to align the way we're serving youth, I think, is kind of the idea behind it. Right. So you're leveraging funds and whatever they're doing with their funds and promoting maybe should align with what we're trying to do or vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what the idea behind it is. So in a sense, what you're kind of doing is everyone's on board with the same ideas of trying to serve youth, and you're really throwing resources, a lot of resources across. So if any grantee says, well, we want to do that, you're basically kind of incentivizing in some ways at this other level, grantees to do some sort of service towards a certain youth, right? Because all the funders or a majority of the funders are going in that direction. So you almost grantees in some ways, say, okay, well, that's where the money is. That's what we got to go do. And we got to deliver those type of services.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the idea, at least.
Looking at the action here in regards to creating a policy legislative committee, I really like that idea. I know the LED has that, and kind of leveraging more resources through legislatively to this work is, I think it's important. I think it's great. And then also, I can't remember which meetings. I have so many meetings. I think it was. Well, we did talk about specifically YDD legislative priorities in a few, like last meeting, I think last specific meetings, but I'd like to also hear what community legislative priorities are, right? And so there's a couple of them, like for instance, in a meeting that I had with the DOJ on reporting hate crimes, allowing for schools to report hate and bias crimes and incidents to the DOJ, right, and having that information at a state level, or banning the use of a noose, symbol of the noose, or the to eliminate some hate and bias activity. So things like that, I think, having a policy committee to actually bring that back up to us or engage us in those conversations. So that way, when it comes to advocacy, we can at least be aware that this is actually in the process. So not only budgetary specific, but also policy related as well.
I like that. That's very proactive, right?
Mm-hmm. And I think even there's some that we can do together too, right? So if we see that there's a gap in the system in all the work that we do, or where grant funding is still not reaching out to the communities that we know need it, then there's opportunities for us to really make some changes that YDD state staff won't be able to do, but us advocates as part of YDC can.
Yeah, I like that policy legislative one a lot. I think kind of what you said, our council members really kind of on that end can really help with that. And then, they help with, we develop something, a strategy or something, and have something dedicated to that efforts, I think the really positive thing.
And it kind of connects back to, I think, what we were talking about before, is connecting again our committee or our grantees to legislators too. It's just really building up, providing platforms for folks to understand the work better.
Yeah, it's a great way to move from talking to talking with.
Yep,
right?
exactly. And I can also say that, folks in the rural areas, especially, depending on the population, it's harder to talk to your legislators that are in more conservative or more rural areas. At least that's my experience with my population and community that I work with. So, we've had some bad experiences in the past. And so just the more relationships that we can build, the better it is, I think, for folks in areas that may not have as much organizational support.
Can you be a little more specific without, can you expand a little more without, indicating any specific people?
Specific legislators? Since we're being recorded right now. Yeah, I can actually. So, we have our agency have legislative sessions. We have specific appointments with, that we schedule community with their legislators. There was in 2019, which passed with bipartisan support, but we were talking to a Republican legislative in regards to the area and representation for our refugee communities. And that it has been increasing in certain rural areas because of displacement, gentrification, and also work, right? That there is more farm work or more industrial work in certain areas. And there basically was an acknowledgement that there was refugees and immigrants in their area, even though that, you know, folks live there and those are their constituents that are talking to them. And that, you know, and that they're, you know, it just didn't, it wasn't a very, I think, respectful or cordial conversation. You know, and you know, you have to also think if there's some, not only anti-immigrant sentiments, but also anti-Blackness there as well, because of the immigrants that came and spoke, or refugees that came and spoke, were from our African refugees. And so there's a lot of dynamics there. And that's also something that, again, you know, we have to be careful as far as spaces that are potentially maybe harmful for our communities as well. But then I think a lot of it's education. Is that what do folks like us have a role in educating first, so that way it does not get to a place where when communities are at spaces where they are meeting folks with power or influence, that this interaction happens. So kind of preparing the legislators about that first, and then preparing our communities about the spaces as well.
Thank you. In the promoting policies and partnerships that expand and leverage resources, I know it's not in there, but somehow this language, I mean, I'm just saying this and people could ignore me or just say, you know, not necessary, and that's fine. But making sure there's not a sort of duplication of resources. So, you know, just, I don't know, just really being prudent regarding, you know, what expenditures that are, you know, addressing, that aren't, that are being, you know, I don't know, economically or very precisely addressing issues, you know. I don't know if that, my language is just sort of stumbling out of my mouth, right? But certainly it's this idea of being prudent and making sure we aren't duplicating resources.
I think that's a really good point, Tabidi, because one of the things we hear a lot in our conversations with lawmakers is it already exists? If it does, is it efficient? If it's not, can it be improved? And how do we remove some of that duplication? And I think especially as we navigate this virtual session more and more, we're getting a sense of it's going to be a heavy lift to pass policy and bills, and with a potential of, you know, more walkouts, as we've kind of seen play out already. Just kind of being mindful of that too. But yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad that you added that.
I just put it on the side here too, because I think that's good. We have a peach here now, next 2 hours. I didn't put that there.
I think we're ahead a little bit.
How are you grabbing the fruit? I haven't figured that out.
There's a fruit market Brian was explaining earlier.
Oh, okay.
No, they were joking about that
That's
earlier.
Hilarious. Going.
I'm feeling undernourished.
I think Cor and Brian was teasing earlier about that.
That's funny.
Well, it's always really interesting about these platforms because every single group that I think everyone's just getting so creative with trying to make virtual life feels as normal as possible.
Yeah, I'd rather definitely be in person right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Just
The fruits are replacing the Post-it notes
yeah.
and the dots.
And the dots, yeah.
But our team is the one that gets to make lemonade out of lemons. And that's
Right.
Yeah, I was wondering the meaning of our lemon group. I was like, does that mean, what does that mean, Melissa?
Are we the bitter group or no?
Oh, something I was wondering about was, and this may be a question that was addressed earlier in the retreat, but have we as a council ever testified as a council in support or in opposition of different bills? That I don't know if that's within kind of the scope of potentially what we could do, but I was just thinking like it would have been great if we could have weighed in on, Senate Bill 1008 from the last long session to, make it harder for youth to be tried as adults and sentenced as adults. And I was just thinking, like, one of the pieces that was named in one of the points here was dismantling Measure 11. And I don't know if we as a council can be public of our, support of dismantling Measure 11, but just a wondering I have and wanted to put that out there.
I can speak a little bit to that. I know in the past, council members in the role as a council member have testified, but a lot of it was related for things that were directly impacted or influenced the Youth Development Council, or something that we were trying to, the Youth Development Council policy that we put forth, right? In that aspect, I know that's happened, but kind of what you're talking about, I don't think we've ever done that historically. Now, that doesn't mean that I think it should be something that should be explored. Maybe, look at committee work and see maybe which committee, where would that fall, right? And I think, through this document, I think that's really we're trying to develop priorities of where we focus our efforts as a council. I think it's really what this document kind of speaks to, something along that, because there probably is some space, but I think there's other conversations that have to happen also, I think, within the council members of committee, right? And take into account other things, whatever they may be, according to whatever legislation and how it's worded, what it's worded, who it impacts, how it impacts, a lot of the smaller detail things. I think that sometimes perhaps Brian may have other knowledge about it or something, right? As well as other legislation that's also coming out, because you may sometimes have two legislative things coming up, right, that may be similar, right, with certain details moved or changed, and that whole process. But I like that idea.
I think there's a bylaw issue there too, because
Yeah, that's what I was wondering about.
Yeah, no single council member can speak on behalf of the council unless the council has taken action to allow them to do it. And so, and we've got it in some rulemaking that we did. It might even be that the chair can't even talk on behalf of it, or maybe can. So I think there's stuff that we should look into there, because if like on these goals around communication and advocacy, we want to be good stewards of that charge, but we also want to do it in a way that we're not getting ourselves into hot water or bringing scrutiny back onto the council because we're not following our very own bylaws and rules.
Absolutely.
I think that's a really great question, Parsa, in regards to like what is our role and authority there, or level of influence there, not necessarily authority as well. And then as far as like if we were to create a committee, we obviously will potentially have to go through some, if we were to support or have connections with any of the bills, that there will be an educational process, and then also a voting process as far as like, and then, and kind of having a better understanding as far as like the depth of that advocacy, if there is an advocacy action that comes from that as well. But yeah.
Right.
Hey, Lemon Team, I have to apologize in advance. I've got to scoot for a little bit. I have a presentation at the Lane Workforce Partnership that I need a couple of minutes to get my head around before I jump into it. I'm hoping that I can make it back for the wrap up of our retreat today, but I got to bounce out of this one here right now.
Thanks, Jeff.
It's been fun making lemonade.
Thank you, Jeff.
Was I hearing correct that we should probably put this one in as some part of action strategy?
I think it would be revisiting the bylaws and looking at like our role in advocacy, something along those lines.
Okay.
I think that'd be good. I think a lot of the committee work, the way I kind of see it working is committees work with other committees, right? To basically figure out, we're thinking about this. Is that possible? Could we do that? And the bylaws committee would respond, say yes, right, or no, right? And it really is kind of this process of committees communicating with each other and possibly external, right? What is it called? Experts, I guess, depending on whatever's being talked about. How you doing, Lindsay? You doing all right? Juggling multiple documents, different tabs, at the same time keeping notes and then typing them.
Yeah, and for some reason, my work phone, people keep calling it, and it keeps, I don't know if you guys can hear it, but it just keeps buzzing and buzzing. I need to turn it off. But then if something important comes in, I don't know. Have a policy committee to engage us in conversations when it comes to advocacy. We can be aware. Does that sound okay?
I'm not sure we're supposed to like identify a person to report back or something. Lindsay, do you know what the next steps are when we get back to a large group?
Well, I think somebody, if there's time, I think somebody needs to be kind of like a reporter. I don't know where my screen is because I can't see. I had an annotated agenda somewhere here. Okay. Staff will take notes in the Google Doc, choose report out person, differentiate between groups. Next step, create template for Google Drive, identify staff member for priority area to take notes. Break at 2:50.
Are we supposed to be having a break right now?
Yes.
Oh, is the break right now?
That's what the agenda says,
Should be a break
2:50.
right now. Yes.
Oh, I thought so they're not bringing us back to a large group first before we break.
I can, want me to just go ahead and ask Melissa? Oh wait, I can't even see Melissa on here. Oh, my Team Lemon.
I'm so lost. There's a button. I don't know where it is.
I know what I can do. Let me go ahead. I can ask Melissa real quick. I can...
Ask for help. I think that we'll get a hold of her if we need to.
I do have to jump off the meeting a little bit earlier as well, so I won't be able to report back just in case.
I just sent Melissa asking if we're on break right now, so see what she says. She sees my message, you know. She probably has like a whole bunch of tabs open too. Oh, she's getting back to me. Oh, I guess we're not on break yet. We're finishing up breakout groups. So I'm guessing she's probably going to bring us back.
I am gonna assume so because
She says, I guess we got it's the last 4 minutes of the breakout group is what she just told me. Just messaged me.
well here I mean I guess we do have leave room buttons if we wanted to use them. We'd probably just send everybody to the main room, I would imagine.
Do we want to figure out how we want to share out with the big group with our last couple minutes together here?
Yeah, that might be a good idea. Let's see.
Oh, do we want
Someone, oh, go ahead, Lindsay, sorry.
Oh, no worries. I was just gonna ask if we wanted to add a third one and a lightning bolt anywhere. Priority 2.
I think we're fine. I think with that. I don't know what's everyone
I
else.
think the other ones are already pulled into the other priorities areas because it's been discussed in other areas.
Okay.
Yeah. Someone from the group wants to report back.
I can report. That's fine. I can go ahead and go over some of this stuff.
And Abe, I can help support you
Cool.
if you need someone on the council to kind of help support.
I'm curious. What else has everyone else written down? I'm just curious. Okay.
Well, that's the first.
All right, it looks like we're being called back to the main room, so I'll see you all in a second.
Awesome, awesome. So great.
I know, it's really fun to see everyone popcorning back in here.
Popcorn, popcorn. Oh, Alyssa, it's you, Alyssa Chatterjee. Yay. Hi. Awesome.
Hi.
Hi, good to see you.
You too. I'll have to jump off pretty soon, but I just wanted to check in. It's been some great conversation.
Awesome. Look at all this. This is great.
We're back.
It worked.
Worked. Melissa, I think we should give Melissa and Lindsay like a huge round of applause.
Here, definitely. They're awesome.
Yes.
Thank you both. I can't believe it. So I think Melissa, and maybe it's a 5-minute break, not a 10-minute break, because we're a little over time. You know, I'm just cutting out the breaks, but I think we have for those, whatever you want to call it, bio break, water in, water out, whatever we want to call it. Oh, Celeste is do you want to say goodbye, Celeste, and then we'll have a little break? Or you just wave?
Bye, Celeste.
All right, so we'll come back at 3:05, and then Karen, we're gonna hand it back to you to kind of do a little bit of reporting out, and I think each group should be thinking about who the reporter is, and we'll see you in a few minutes. Thanks, Alyssa.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, do I get a break since I was late?
Everyone gets a break. Thanks.
Hey, no, you need to stay on. We have a special assignment for you. I'm kidding.
I'll stay on, Jaime, if you are reading another story.
I think somebody else got another one around here. So. Thank you.
All right. Coming back. Karen, do you want to lead us in the report out process?
I would be delighted to. So one thing that I think our group had trouble with was the actual prioritization piece of it. It just was really tough. So I am going to leave it to Cords because he was the note taker for our group to talk about the themes and some of the key points, things that were brought up from us. I think we have essentially about 5 minutes per group. If you did not decide on someone to report out, feel free to fast and furiously chat amongst yourselves to designate someone. So I'm going to turn it over to Cord for our group, and we were the grape group.
Hi, sorry, I'm just getting unmuted here. All right. So I sorry, I had to step away for a second. Are we the first ones to go here?
Sorry, I volunteered you without knowing that you were back. I apologize. Yes.
Oh, sorry. No, I just got delayed, but I will go ahead and start off with, so we started, I believe our first one was priority 3. Is that right?
I think so. Yes.
And just to let people know, I think you literally have somebody, Melissa, like 2 minutes. So
yeah,
so I'll just kind of pick a highlight from each of these, maybe just to mention some things that jumped out from each conversation. In this one, a couple of things. I mean, one was incorporating, the adolescent brain development within that sort of spread of creative and culturally based programming priority. And there was just a question for the other groups, like how else can we really lift youth-centered pathways and practices that affirm identity and safety? We felt like there was possibly more that we could do in that area of this particular priority. In priority 4, I think that we co-signed the starting the strategic planning implementation as being a great first step. But one thing that we wanted to note was that we think that linking the strategic and authentic relationships with sovereign governments and other agencies is an important part of that implementation, and really seeing implementation as work that is done in partnership and not just by the council and agency. I will jump down to priority 5. This one is so rich. There were so many things. We added a whole bunch of actions. We had a lot of questions. There's a lot of conversation about just how we can do more to really strengthen and empower the youth council members and really elevate the council training for the entire council by making the process and training better for youth members, that ultimately everything we do that improves accessibility benefits the entire council membership. And then I will hop back up to priority 1. We ended up having just a lot of conversation around priority 1, but I think that we did like, there was a comment that another group made around creating conditions for grantees and funding priorities that are designed to hold folks accountable for disparate issues. That was just an interesting concept. I think that it's worth thinking about what accountability looks like within the frame of all the things that we've discussed here as part of this planning. And I'll keep it brief and stop there.
So after the grave group was the pair group. Is the pair group ready to go?
This is Eric. I'm going to defer to Anya or Molly or whomever has access, or Sanji, whoever has access to the notes. I would just say our pair group was awesome, and it was delightful to have the opportunity to talk through some of the priority language. I would say from my perspective, the overarching theme in all of the areas was just how important it is to reaffirm, reassess our equity lens and make sure that equity and honoring identity and holding safety kind of our youth as primary focus needs to influence all of our work. So I'll let someone who's got the notes in front of them bring those up, but that's those are our overarching comments.
I don't have the notes, Molly. I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but you are the one in charge with the notes and the powers, the superwoman's powers.
Yoda. Thanks. Yeah, so I think Eric summed up that main point that came up in every area that we were talking about. I think another area that we spend a lot of time thinking about in terms of priority 2, when we're talking about promoting policies and partnerships that expand and leverage resources. We talked a lot about adding a strategy or theme with engaging other CBOs, other nonprofits, and making sure that when we're talking about sovereign nations and other state agencies, that we're including local agencies, county, community colleges, etc. So that was kind of another theme that we are also looking at, kind of raising questions where that link with post-secondary is coming up throughout these conversations. I'd say that was the second theme that came up a few times. And I'm just checking real quick here. We ended talking, so beyond that real prioritization of resources based on an equity lens, we ended up talking a lot at the end about, let me get down to that note, 1 second. The idea of the YDD as the go-to to what? And so in terms of looking at communicating that awareness of the organization and really what we're about, to make that clear when people are interacting with our group. And I will end on do no harm. So we spend a lot of time talking about trauma from within the juvenile system, and that needs to be a part of the conversation as well. Did anybody else want to add anything that we missed?
You're muted, Judge. I don't know if you're talking.
Judge Abernathy, I believe you're muted if you're talking.
I'm sorry, I said that all muted. We wanted to prioritize explicitly in the action strategies BIPOC youth and LGBTQ youth within the rubric of under the rubric of safety, and that they were and actually girls as well, under the rubric of safety, to prioritize those groups.
Thank you for that. Okay, so now we have the Apple group.
Okay.
We also asked staff to summarize for us. So Jared is going to do that because I have no notes in front of me. We lost one of our members already. So I'm sorry that we won't be able to include Celeste's voice directly, but I just want to say one thing, Jared, before you jump in, and that consistently throughout all of our review, we had a really tough time prioritizing also. We didn't do that very well. But consistently, the theme that came up was that we need to be clear about what we're the go-to agency for, and that we need to have 2 or 3 top themes and values that we promote rather than trying to spread ourselves too thin, because goodness knows there's far too much work to do. So Jared, with that.
Great, thank you. So starting at the top with priority 1, again, echoing a lot of the themes that we're hearing so far, we put a lightning bolt on this one next to commissioning a study or white paper. There was a lot of discussion at this point about really understanding the data, having a really good picture of what the disparities are, and especially how COVID is going to impact our grantees and youth across the state. So really emphasizing data and finding ways to access that data so we can make informed decisions. Priority number 2. This one, we talked a lot about how our role at YDD needs to be bigger than just funding, and actually diving really into policy work as well. Developing a policy agenda and really kind of finding those few things that we want to emphasize and be the experts in, so that we can, in addition to funding, just be those policy experts. And let's see, again, lots of talking about intersections between different agencies and federal funding as well, trying to leverage that in addition to just resources in Oregon. Priority 3. Excuse me while I scroll. This was, again, like we talked about, really defining our role and understanding our lane, because there's so much, you know, really picking things that we want to do well. And also a big theme here was evaluation, making sure that that programs understand how we're evaluating them, really maybe identifying some core principles and giving grantees tools to be able to evaluate themselves and know how we're evaluating them. And again, that goes back to the data conversation and metrics. And then priority 4, we talked about determining areas where we would like to be kind of aggressively ambitious. So again, choosing those key points that we really want to hone in on. And I think that covers the main points. Anybody else have anything to add?
I would like to add just one thing that Celeste brought up. One of the key elements that she mentioned as a potential metric and as something we should be striving for is the notion of youth belonging, and that with a sense of belonging comes in, it represents network, it represents connectivity, and all of those things that we're trying to get to. And she would like to see us dig into that a little bit further. She says there's some great research going on, and provided us with a link to a reference. So that's something that we might take a look at and could be an organizing element.
Thank you for that. And we are now at the Peach group. I hope everything was peachy.
Everything was peachy. Absolutely. Thanks, Karen. So it was a pretty good discussion. I think it was mostly at the 30,000 foot level. So imagine most of yours were. I'm just going to take the probably full 2 minutes to kind of dive in a little bit. So some of the focus of the group was mainly about process and what we can do to improve on really making those youth voices heard, being that advocate for those youth. And then also, what is YDC's story? I think a lot of people are really looking for, what is that narrative? What is that focus? What is that principal directive? What are we about? And so we're wanting to build on that a little bit more. In terms of priority 2, the focus is we're identify on work and awareness of raising of what the YDC and YDD is, and identify where we intersect and how we can collaborate and expand and enhance. Those are all key words I keep hearing. Collaborate with partners and stakeholders on trainings, identity, culture, language, bias, racism. For priority 3, it was continuously improving grant-making process. How do we make grantees be committed to youth voice and feedback? Can we make a youth-led, grassroots-based feedback loop required for organizations receiving funds, so we always know what how those youth are doing, what they think about the funding and programming? How can we create an environment where grantees feel safe in communicating their struggles and challenges and serving youth without jeopardizing funding? And then for priority 4, it was strengthen council's sense of purpose and role, sustain its collective wisdom and knowledge, make it more youth focused, nothing about youth without youth, develop pathway for council members to engage with staff and learn more about the work. And then we really liked the comment from, I think it was Great Group, Jared, develop a policy legislative strategy, the policy agenda. That was something that our group liked a lot too. If anybody else has anything to add for our group, for Peach, feel free to chime in. Otherwise, I think I may have captured it, hopefully. Okay.
I see a thumbs up there, so we will move on. And I am certain that the lemon group made lemonade.
Oh, you took it from me.
Oh, sorry. It was too obvious.
Yes. So yeah, I'll kind of speak broadly about some of the themes we talked about. Again, kind of what's been mentioned before. We talked about equity and the idea around inclusivity, right? And one of someone we talked about is kind of parents, right? And serving our youth and what role are they playing, right? Within their voice being heard and being included in kind of our policies. I understand we as council members almost have parents, but being a parent, some of the organizations are being served, right? The youth, so hearing from them and their what their voice has to say, right? And part of that also kind of segues into kind of communications, internal and external communications, and how we're again kind of telling the YDD or YDC story. But then again, also how we communicate internally between council, staff, and what we're trying to get across, which also kind of led into this other conversation, right? Again, about what role the council can play legislatively as advocates, right? That was also something that was brought up. And how do we do that? That's something that wanted to be explored further. Again, kind of with looking at data disparities and prioritizing our resources where we see those is another area that we really talked about. And that's kind of what I recall mostly from the discussions we've had that kind of stick out. I don't know if there's anything you want to add, Prasa.
I thought that was really great, Abe. And the other thing I would add is when we're thinking about engaging more youth on the council and on the committees, we talked about what can we do more to remove barriers for youth accessing the different opportunities and provide them with support, because there is an opportunity cost at times when you want to be able to dedicate your time on the council and on the different committees. So what are we doing to help alleviate some of those opportunity costs, whether it's through a stipend or other professional development and supports? So that's something we talked about as well. And just, again, going back to our equity lens and process being the foundation of all of our work and ensuring that it permeates through the plan and the actions that we take. Because that was key to what Abe had mentioned in terms of who we're missing at the table, who do we need to engage even further, and then all the way down to some of our very basic process pieces. So that's what I would also add to what Abe had shared. Thank you so much, Abe, for representing our group.
No problem. Thank you, President.
That was absolutely wonderful. We do have, I think, a few moments. If anybody wanted to add anything as far as the themes go for the report backs. I will shut up for a second and feel free to unmute, and then we can go on to the next thing.
This is Eric. I'll just reflect that we're talking about some very important things and very exciting work that goes beyond just making grants. So obviously that's a duh statement, but that gets me energized as a council member to be part of the capital W work. So thank you.
And I think that's a nice segue. So this time that we've set aside is really to reflect on the 3 days, what we've heard, what we've been thinking, what actions we want to take, sort of next steps from here. And for me, one takeaway that I have kind of mentally is so much of what we are dealing with is systemic failure in other places. And that's why there's so much connectivity between the YDD, YDC, and all of the other entities. And those systemic failures should not ever lead us to think that the youth that we serve have failed. We have failed them in some big ways. And having their voices come in and making sure that they are represented was something that I really took away from one of the earlier days that we've had. Other takeaways, reflections?
If I may add, just, our scope is large. It's very broad, on one side dealing with grants over there, now talking about the big W for work and policy. But let's not forget that the other side of our house is juvenile crime prevention, Fourth Amendment jurisprudence and services related to that. So there is quite, from one end of the spectrum to the other, in terms of our focus, where we could identify priorities. So I just wanted to put that out there too. So.
Can I make a point? I like what Ryan just said, and I would add this caveat that, and I know there's no panacea, but the goal could be, or could be, if we really can be effective, we can actually mitigate the amount of work and resources needed to be directed toward juvenile justice, right? I mean, to me, it's a sort of measurement, and I know that, again, there's no panacea and there's no 100%, but we definitely should be able to mitigate that in ways in which some of the stuff that we do in those spaces, those resources that are placed on the other side, really have the intended proactive impact instead of reacting and trying to fill deficiencies that got missed because we didn't, and some of these things are out of our control, right? Because there's so many polities that impact what happens to young people that lead to some of these dynamics. But I just wanted to sort of say I'm hearing you, and then just adding that caveat to how we think.
Thanks to be.
I didn't intend to create silence. I was hoping.
It's okay. I have learned to give a moment for the introverts, mainly because I know that in the breakout groups, there was a lot of discussion and a lot of information. So I'm just hoping that if there is an introvert or somebody who's a little shyer, wants to speak up, to give them the space to do so.
So the next step is just us becoming a bigger agency, right? Getting more funding.
Yes, global world domination has always been the strategy. Yes.
That's not supposed to say the quiet part out loud.
Oh, sorry. Sorry. Okay, so let's move on to next steps. And some of this we're just going to have to sort of talk through, Brian, I think in front of everybody. What I'm feeling like is that we probably need to take all of the notes, mesh them together, put them into some sort of an order, and then figure out whether we need to bring the full committee back for more discussion, or just the strategic planning committee, one, or both, and to do that piece of it.
I think that sounds right. I think, yeah, we'll need to, yeah, bring this stuff into the workshop and start making some toys, and then come back. I think you said it, to the strategic planning committee probably initially, and then we have our March meeting, March 18th, if I'm not mistaken. I think as a committee, we should talk about like what we want to deliver then. I hear loud and clear today, and I believe I kind of have thought this throughout, that since this is an evolving process, it's not like we're going to bring you a finalized plan in March. I think we can bring you the next piece, the next product, and we want a living, breathing plan to a great extent. But again, I know we want to like be able to like hit a milestone. So so we should do some conversation again among that committee, maybe even to the smaller, like Heidi, Karen, and a few of us will sort of get our heads together. Then we'll get the strategic planning committee together. We'll come back to you in March and say kind of here's where we're at, and then this has been super helpful and valuable. So,
and do we have a strategic planning committee meeting on the books, Melissa?
I don't think that we do. I will check our records to see if there was one scheduled before
I have a feeling we don't, so we may have to have an impromptu one between now and the 18th. Yeah. Just a heads up for the strategic planning committee members.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's going to happen. So I think, Brian, with that, we can probably give folks some time back in their day.
I think we may be able to do that. What a wonderful thing. Now I know that where's Adrian? She's somewhere on here. Adrian and I have been going back and forth, have appreciated Jaime's stories. I don't know, Adrian had a story that we were talking about her sharing. Adrian, can I put you on the spot?
Sure, why not? I can't be invisible here. No, definitely Jaime, have enjoyed your stories. Was hoping Brian would ask you instead of me, but he didn't. And so, and also actually being in Andy's session yesterday and just hearing him talk about what he's doing with Warm Springs, like I want to hear those stories. I want to visit once we can be in person. The story I have, it just really, it's one where, I don't know if you've heard of the program called Girl Strength, but there is a program for girls and women. It's a violence against women prevention curriculum. And I actually became a Girl Strength instructor because what I saw is like, wow, you're teaching these girls that they have value and they can fight for themselves. They can protect themselves. Oftentimes we see in movies and everything, like all of a sudden, woo, someone's after me and ooh, I can't defend myself. And so with this program, and it's through the Portland Police Bureau, they get volunteers, they train us to teach these girls. And one incident stood out to me because you're there in the moment with that youth and you're hoping the curriculum you're taking them through really makes an impact, not just in the class, but afterwards. And there's one activity that we lead the girls through. It's called Define and Tell. And so basically, if someone is doing something you don't like, whether it's a friend hugging you because you don't like hugs, like how do you tell them and it not be awkward, to a teacher doing something inappropriate, or someone that's after you that has ill will, how do you use your voice and tell them? And so basically it's, if something is happening, it's like, define what it is. So what it is that they're doing that you don't like, tell them why, and then tell them the next action. Well, obviously, depending on who it is, you may be nice with your friend, not nice with the perpetrator. So we have them doing all those different activities. And obviously to talk them through it, yeah, it's gonna go in an ear, out an ear. So we have them practice it. And I was at the Montevilla Community Center right on 82nd and Gleason, where some stuff does happen. And one of the young ladies, we were leading them through the activity, and we said, we're gonna emulate it. So one of the girls, I wanted her to practice it with me. And as soon as she started, she looked down, and I said, look me in the eye. And so she looked me in the eye, and I can tell you, it was one of those like, wow, she had so much more confidence when she did that one little gesture. And then she went through the activity. But the more impactful part of the story to me is, so I went off and I was listening to the other, girls do this activity. And all of a sudden, the girl that I had paired her up with, I hear the youth saying to her, look me in my eye. I was like, what? Wow. I had that youth say it to this girl. So she got to practice it, not just from an adult, but from another youth. And how much confidence comes in that. So for me, where I look at the work I do, and it's, sex trafficking and exploitation, and how I know that there are pimps that will go into malls and they will test out girls. They'll go to them and possibly say, oh, you have pretty eyes. And the girl that looks him in the eye and says, thank you, he's like, not going to worry with her. She has confidence. But the girl that looks down and says, thank you, that's the target. So, to me, the work that we are doing, and giving grants to these youth serving organizations, and the work that you all staff are doing to help us get this money out to them, it is hugely critical for us to prevent some of these things from happening, this lifetime of trauma, going into the juvenile justice system, just as what has been previously mentioned. So I just appreciate the work that the staff is doing and that we are all doing as a community, as a family. Jaime mentioned, we were talking about grants and, training the grantees. It was like, can we break bread first? It's like how we are coming together as a family, as a community to be better for our kids, because we have felt them. The system has felt them. So how can we do that? And so, yeah, that's the story I have to share. Thank you.
Thank you, Adrian. Really, really appreciate it. Yeah, and I think for me as let me try to hold it together. Yeah, as the director, but I mean, I'm here to serve. We will always make space for those stories and for those relationship moments, right? Because we need to be connected ourselves, even if it's in this virtual, some kind of antiseptic world. We'll be back together, but we can always make space for each other, because then that'll enable us, I think, to make the spaces that our youth so desperately need, crave, and know actually how to create themselves. We just kind of need to get out of the way sometimes, and sometimes they need a little help, a little direction, and that reminder to look up. So thank you all. I don't know. I know Celeste is not here, and I think somehow by some rule or something, a council member needs to actually adjourn us. So
I will gladly give people time back. The meeting is now adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for your participation and collaboration. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.